want to ask you to imagine that you're in the hospital, a large metropolitan city. It's 7 a.m. And as you look into a room that says surgical waiting area, you see a woman who sits down with several bags, unpacks some things, stares at her phone for a while. And then she stands up, begins to move around. She stands with her feet apart and reaches up overhead with her arms in the air, taking a deep breath in. And then she leans forward, her arms outstretched, reaching all the way down to the floor while keeping her legs straight. She proceeds to put her hands on the floor, walk them forward with her back straight and her legs straight. If you're familiar with yoga, this is the downward dog pose. What do you think when you see this woman doing yoga poses in the early morning hours in a hospital waiting room? Why is she there and why is she doing these things?
Oh, that was a good story, short. Hey, this is Don,
This is Gina with Focused Healthy Family.
and this is podcast number 108. And today the title of our podcast is Chauffer Self-Care, and we'll talk more about that. But first, let's take just a little break for our sponsor.
And today we're talking about Ask the OT. This is a new program that we're starting where you're going to be able to connect via online, via phone call, Zoom, and ask questions about dealing with elderly parents or loved ones and navigating that journey and incorporating different components, dealing what if your parent has dementia and how are you supposed to get them to listen to you and follow through, and you got to get them out of their house but they're resistant and yet they can't follow what you're saying and understand. Or maybe you're wondering, does my dad have dementia? Why is he doing these funny things? What's going on? So we're building a community of support. My years of experience as an occupational therapist working primarily in adult and geriatric rehab, and my background also with my family and helping my father navigate the journey of Parkinson's disease for the past 17 years and seeing his decline and his issues with dementia and all the families I've worked with over the years in working with this population. I want to help other people with this, all this information and experience that I've accumulated. And I know how disconnecting it to be. You're juggling multiple things at once. You're going to work, you're taking your kids to high school activities, and now you're helping your parents navigate it. Maybe it's a long distance thing. So come join us in our community.
Yeah, Gina will be doing her first live kind of Q&A talk on April 2nd, 7 p.m. You can find out more about it by going to our website, focusedhealthyfamily.com. And actually, we have a little logo up there about Ask the OT, whether you can click on that and you'll find out more information about how to get involved with this community that we're building. So check us out, and we look forward to you being there asking your questions. Starting April 2nd, but it's good to join now and get involved with the community. There's a lot of resources up there for you to be able to pull, and we look forward to talking with you.
Yes, feel free to send us questions you have now.
So we're back, and we're talking about chauffeur self-care. It's kind of a lot of sh sounds to it. Yeah, so Gina, you kind of came up with the topic, so kind of tell us what it that.
You'd like to know how we can connect a woman doing yoga in a hospital with a chauffeur's self-care.
Yes.
So in 2019, Don had open heart surgery and he had to be there super early. Actually, he was already in the hospital. He had been there for several nights. I arrived really early in the morning to see him off before he went back to prep for surgery. And I'm the woman who came in with all my bags into that waiting room. And I brought things that I could do. I probably even had some knitting on me or crochet. I make things. Um, my laptop, journals, and yet what was most helpful to me is that time that I took to just do some deep breathing to stretch my body and do some yoga poses. And it was very calming and soothing for me and grounding and centering. There were a lot of tools that I used in that time period. Little did Don know things that were going on while he was
Yeah, how was that?
asleep, having his chest cut into. A friend of mine came and stayed with me for a little while and sat with me. I'm sitting there. They tell you that the surgery is routine and that the Don's mortality rate is really low. The cat is pulling
You
on
have
my
another
pants.
friend that wants to sit with you.
Well, just come up here if you want to come up here. And yet, they're opening his chest up. They're stopping his heart and lungs and putting him on this breathing tube, and all this is going to be happening to him. And just the reality of that and
Hmm.
the concerns. We had arranged that our oldest son, who was about 22 at the time, was coming over to spend most of the day with me. So it was nice to sit there with him. And when the doctor finally came out to let us know how things had went, they take you into this little room to go over things with you. Um, and this very overweight cardiothoracic surgeon sat us
Yeah,
down
I
to,
thought I always looked at him going, wow, I think he's next in line for this kind of surgery, but
talk to us and let us know how you were doing. And it was a very long day, quite a long experience. And
a frightening experience for me, waking up with that tube in my mouth.
so I had all this time. I was so anxious about things that I didn't do all the things that I brought with me and intended to do. Yet I know I used some tools like tapping, even just rubbing my collarbone, deep breathing, some mindfulness. I started thinking about this as I was just thinking about we have a kid who's in robotics, and we took her to a competition over the weekend, and she had to be there extra early. And so I had all this sitting and waiting time. And for any of us with parents of kids, especially as they get older, they're involved in sports or other activities, scouting, or um,
Ants and yeah, and I don't, and I don't think our kids are as wrapped up into it as I see a lot of kids that their schedules are like, hour, 1 hour to the next hour to the next hour sometimes. And I feel for the kids and well, the parents too.
well, if your kid's in school, maybe you have to pick them up and then take them from here to there. And so there's just, we often say, we're the chief cook and
Bottle
bottle
washer.
washer and chauffeur for our children, that we're taking them here, taking them there. That's why we're so excited when they can go and get their driver's license. Yet that's a whole nother experience. So we have this time, we have this sitting time. I used to take my oldest would do music classes, and I'd be sitting in the car because the youngest might be napping, or um, just lots of in between times. And how can we take care of ourselves in those moments? How can we use some of that time to really tune in? We talk about doing self care, about taking a nice soaking bath, or going out somewhere by ourselves, having some time alone. Yet we're so busy.
Yeah.
How can we really do those things? And so there's lots of different ways to do that. I crochet, carry my bag with me so that I can pull it out. Maybe sometimes I'm just winding up some yarn into a ball or working on a project. I can bring my journal with me where I go. Um,
Well, it's even stuff
I'll
like
show you the gremlin here who's messing with me in my lap.
Um, it's even some of the simple physical stuff you can do, like, if you're in a building and you got to either do elevator or steps, you can take the steps. Um, it reminds me of the podcast we did, and for our audience, you may want to look back at the Simple Self-Care by Rita Garnto. Um, and she talked about, which I think is because, like you said, we're really busy in our lives, and finding moments to do stuff can be tedious and hard to do sometimes. And she talks about things like she said, I think I remember one of her things was she used to put her foot up on this on the sink while she was brushing teeth and doing stretching while she's brushing her
I think
teeth.
she still does that.
Yeah, I think yeah, it's true.
And
Uh,
so not only that, but really like, how can I take just 5 minutes for myself? I got all this going on, or I'm waiting. How can I just stop for a minute? How can I breathe? I had a family member in the hospital a year ago, and I would walk around the hospital, and having your walking shoes handy with you, I'm really good after having visits to the hospital, grabbing a bag of things, essential items, water bottles, snack to take with me to be able to just jump and go. And in those times, you don't know what is going to unfold. You don't always know what you need. And having things handy, being able to get out, do a quick little walk, even if you're walking in place or going up and down a flight of stairs while you're waiting. If you've got a young kid with you, you can engage them with,
One, two.
it might not, there's times in our life when it's not always that we're really alone, but yet finding these moments and going, okay, I'm stressed. I got this. I could play a game on my phone, or maybe I could stop for a minute.
Well, that's
Maybe
one.
I could just take a breath, just do some tapping, and just close my eyes.
Yeah,
We can spend a lot of time in the car going here and there, and we can get really tired. We can pump ourselves with caffeine. We can also just,
don't close your eyes while you're driving, though.
maybe our kid's in an activity and we're sitting there for 20 minutes, set an alarm on your phone and just close your eyes. And maybe you'll fall asleep, or maybe you'll just let your eyes have some moment of rest and more relaxed position.
Well, it helps the thinking too, because if your eyes are open, you're looking at things that are going on and thinking about, oh, I need to be doing, versus closing it. You don't have that visual
Input.
stimulation or whatever that so one of the things when I'm talking with my clients that I work with in the tapping is I ask them about, do you do any kind of meditation? And I can probably 90% of the time you see this kind of panic go across their face because they are they're thinking of meditation as this, guru on the mountain, and not that that's bad, but they think about it's going to take 20 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, whatever. And so what I talk about, I like to look at meditation. I don't care for the word because of that fact, but I like to look at meditation at anything that you lose yourself into, that you tune into yourself. And so what I do for myself in the morning, I call it a check-in. I do the deep breathing like Gina was just doing, and at the same time I'm just adding the tapping. But then I turn inward and go, how am I doing today? How am I feeling? How am I feeling as far as pains in my body? And also, how am I emotionally feeling? Am I am I feeling, as I say, happy, crappy, stressed, frustrated, whatever? And that allows me then to look at what I can do to help kind of slowly change that. And like I said, myself, I use the tapping part and I continue the breathing. The other thing I started doing recently is when I take the breath in, I use it for the pain a lot. I'll imagine the breath going to the pain. I visualize it. I close my eyes, I take the breath, and I imagine it going to my back or going to my shoulder or wherever might be the pain. And then what I imagine too is as I exhale that, I imagine some of the pain flowing out with it. And I've been using this in some of the talks I've been doing. And it's been pretty amazing to watch I'll ask the people if they feel a little less pain. And usually it does bring it down some. So I've been finding it very effective. So I've been really recommending it to my patients and clients I work with, doing it on a regular daily basis to start your day off or to end your day with something like that. Just a thought. Sorry.
I just wanted to share another story. My dad was in the hospital. Um, when was the last time he was there? With COVID. I guess it was right before the holidays, and my mom came down with COVID. So she's homesick and she can't go see him. worried about her and her own care. So I pack up my things. We had just moved an hour and 15 minutes away from them. I go stay at my mom's, bringing my mask, keeping my distance, staying in my room so that I can drive over to the hospital, which luckily was not far from my parents' house. And I'd go sit with my dad and be there for him and help him get set up with eating and feeding himself and keeping him distracted from all the stuff going on in his mind as he's dealing with dementia and Parkinson's and overcoming pneumonia from COVID, getting him up, getting him moving. The occupational therapist in me won't sit still. And I see the importance of him being able to stand and move around. And I know for my dad, he has back issues. And when he's uncomfortable, he gets up and he would typically walk and move. So I want to be there for him. And I brought my bag of all my things that I can do. And yet, when I sit in the room with him, he falls asleep for a few minutes and I think, oh, I could start typing and working on this. And then he wakes up and he asks me a question. So he's got COVID. So the room has this huge, loud air purifier. And so it's noisy. And here I am, 54 years old, too much loud music. I don't hear as well with that background noise. So I'm having to get up and sit close to him to hear what he's trying to tell me with his soft, low voice he has. And at one point, I stepped out of the room for a little bit. I think I went to get something to eat and I took a few minutes just to sit. I took care of some phone calls I needed to, some appointments for my kids. And I realized I needed that. I needed to step away for a little bit. I was still in the hospital. They could contact me if they needed me. I'd be back up there to check on him. But I needed that time to step away and not be continuously in the room with him. It was a lot. It was overwhelming. It was just that anticipation of what does he need now? And I found that helpful. And it's kind of a thing I didn't figure out till I had been doing it a while and just realizing, yes, we want to be there for someone, but we've also got to figure out what we need.
Mm.
Maybe I just take a nice brisk walk outside down to the cafeteria, have a few moments to sit. I know when my mom was finally feeling better, we would go down and have a meal together and be able to talk about things separate from my dad, which was very helpful. He's very tuned in to everything going on around him to the extreme and yet doesn't understand what's being said and overhears things and misinterprets things. And so it really helps to talk about things away from him and not add to his confusion. So these are just some things that I've found, that I can do and realizing how important that is, and what it, and maybe I bring too many different things to do. Maybe I say, okay, I'm bringing this ball of yarn and I'm going to start something, or I'm going to work on tying off strings, or I'm going to give myself a chance to just zone out for a little bit, finding a quiet space to do that, figuring out. I went on a phone call while I was there and I tried to find a spot in the hospital that was quiet, and it was a smaller hospital and it was difficult to locate a place to sit where I could still connect to Wi-Fi. There's so many hours we've been in the car taking our kids places, right, Don? And
Hmm.
I even like to think about it stoplights. I think I learned this from Jan Luther. You're at a stoplight for a while, especially if there's cars behind you. If you just close your eyes and breathe for a minute, they're going to beep at you when the light turns
They'll
green.
let you know, yeah. They'll be your alarm clock.
And you just take a minute and take a breath. Can you just tap for a minute? Can you just focus on one thought, one breath? Maybe there's a bird or some noise that you can just focus in on for a few minutes just to kind of get that moment of recharge in these little moments, these small moments that we have, these waiting moments in between times, whatever we're doing, whether it's, taking care of other family members, picking our kids up, taking them places, so many things that we're doing, driving here, driving there, at least in the US, many areas where we live, there's not the ability to walk places. There's just a lot of time spent in the car, a lot of travel time. And in taking those time, figuring out ways to give yourself a few minutes. It's great when you can take more than, maybe you have an hour, your kid's in a class and you don't want to be too far away. Maybe there's some interesting store that is nearby and you can just go walk around and browse. I did that one time and found this really cool journal and I bought it for my daughter. Maybe you're just window shopping. Maybe you can actually schedule a massage or some self-care appointment, a manicure to do while they're at an activity if you have a larger chunk of time. Reach out to a friend, schedule to talk with someone like with your voice, not through your fingers, and have an actual
Yeah,
conversation with
that
someone.
that's one thing I think we need to incorporate more is contact, both physical contact as far as getting with people, but also talking with them. Everybody seems to be so afraid to pick up the phone and use the voice to say something to somebody versus let me pop a text to them. 'Cause you can't read the text, read into, or you can read into the text the wrong kind of intention or whatever to it. And I think that's where it can be its downfall a little bit. And you could read anger into it when there really isn't, or
Or it can just lack that emotional empathy
yeah.
that speaking to someone as an introvert, I was so grateful when all the social media came out and ability to text and message people because it's a lot easier. And
Mhm.
yet it's made it more challenging for me to really push myself to say, hey, I really want to talk to this person. I know during COVID, I set up a video chat with a friend just to connect. And one of my friends told me about you can turn off your self view on camera, like when we
Mhm.
were on Zoom together, so that you're looking at the other person. Because a normal face to face conversation, you are not looking at yourself. You don't have a
So,
mirror sitting right there next to the person. And turning that off and really just having a real conversation and being able to look at the person you're speaking to. And we can also pick up the phone, we can do a FaceTime call. How can we take those moments and make the most of them? Maybe it's a spontaneous, maybe I'll give someone a call. Maybe they're there, maybe they're not, but you've made that connection. Maybe you like to color. Take a coloring book and some crayons or pencils or something and just give that gift to yourself. Find ways to have little moments of calm, rest, relaxation in the busyness of the day.
well, I was thinking of too, as you're talking about the car, is audiobooks. You can even listen to podcasts there. And you might want to think about the type of podcast or the type of thing you listen to that would calm you versus or relax you versus something that would get you worked up. Um, but also the tapping process, I use it sometimes when I'm in the car, just simple. I mean, you don't do anything dramatic with it, but I'll do the breathing. I don't close my eyes when I'm doing it. But I use that tapping even while I'm driving, because it does in situations where we have somebody that pulls in front of you wrong or can get you worked up. And that was one of the situations I, for a long time, dealt with. I kind of a road rage in a way, but not the shooting kind, I guess. But I would, by the time I'd get home, I'd be so bound up inside. And I learned to use the tapping and the breathing and working through it to realize, because what I realized in my own case was as I do in my work, I dig into those things to figure out what's underneath it. And for me, it was, I felt like people were stealing my time. If I was stuck in traffic, I wasn't at work doing the work I need to do, or I wasn't home doing, and so I had to work through that. And the tapping, both in the car and at home, helped me to work through that so that I still not real happy when somebody pulls in front of me, and there might be a few choice words that come out that I don't really want to. But in thinking about it, when you're really not hurting anybody but yourself if you're getting angry, because that person, whoever it was, is long gone.
And you don't know what's going on with them.
Yep.
I vent about this, my current route to work. I get into Charlotte, and right before I get to where my work is, there's construction. They've been doing construction on this road apparently forever. And so it narrows down to one lane. And sometimes they shift it right or left, but it stays that way for a while. And there's always those people who decide they're going to go all the way up and scoot in front. And I get so irate. And my coach, she says, okay, so what is, tune into yourself. What is that saying about you? Why are you so aggravated with this? How can I, reshape and rethink about this? And because to me, it's a fairness. It's like we've
I
all
was
been waiting in line, and it,
that's
it slows things down if you've got people coming around and scooting in. And yeah, it's not fair. And I take my car and I try to block both lanes, and I'm like, no, you're not
I
gonna.
open that door and I blow him away.
Oh, look, the motorcycle he's riding between. He's splitting lanes, if you know what I mean. This cutting in line, that's an act of war. I saw him coming. I opened my door, knocked him over, pulled out my pistol, blew him away. Jesse James behind the wheel. It's high noon in an automobile. You call me crazy, you call me sick, yeah, but I got to get to where I'm going too quick.
Go back
Quoting
to
a David Wilcox song.
excellent.
And there's times when I'm in busy traffic and there's just people coming out of whatever it is, a gas station or something, and I'm like, okay, I'm gonna let someone, in. That's different to me. But so like stopping and like, okay, I'm getting angry at this. What's going on here? And just kind of think about and be like, okay, I'm really angry right now, and that's just where I'm at. And for me, music helps me a lot, whatever mood I'm in, to help shift my mood. Having some music playing in the car um, can be helpful. I've also found my son connected me with NPR quiz show. Wait, wait, don't tell me. And I realized they'd turned it. It's a podcast, so you can listen to it when it airs, or tune into the podcast. And it airs on Sunday, and I've been using that. Sometimes I'll listen on my way to work, or sometimes I'm going to leave this for my trip home, and I can almost listen to the entire thing on my route. And so it's something fun. It's something light. I can just enjoy the silly podcast and these quiz. And I also keeps me up to date on news stories,
Yeah.
sometimes obscure stories.
Well, if I could share just a little story, but talk about the programs you really like, and I used to like the
TV shows.
what's that?
I was interpreting the word programs.
Oh, this is not a radio program or radio show.
What was it?
Well, it was really part of a show. It was the rest of the stories, but Paul Harvey.
Oh, okay.
I still like him. He tells the story in a way that you don't know who he's really talking about till he gets to the end, you know. So it was very intriguing for me. And so when I traveled, when I used to travel, I covered 5 states at one time. I learned in every city at the time frame and the station and everything where he would be. So if I was in that city at that moment, I knew exactly where to turn to find him. So I could always, so I would find him wherever I'd go, sometimes multiple times if I travel from one city to another to another. So it was always fun, and it just made the trip a lot better because listening to stories. Um,
And
so
now it's so much easier to do that with podcasts,
yeah,
and you can pull things up ahead of time, have things
and I think
ready
he's
for
actually
you.
on podcast on a not he's not around anymore, but I think they've put his stories up
Stories
that way.
on podcasts. So yeah, there's so many, different, and taking a few minutes, maybe you get in the car and you're in a rush to go to work, but be like, okay, before I go, I'm just going to take a minute. I'm going to load this up and make it easy for me. And like I use a map app wherever I go because it helps me if I zone out for a minute to kind of let me know where I'm going and keep me, you got so many things on your mind, and it just kind of helps keep you focused and letting you know where you're going.
I finally changed the voice on mine today, so I'm anxious now to go travel somewhere so I can hear him talk. I just decided it's like getting tired of the
Same
British.
voice.
Is,
It's
uh,
fun. These different apps have different
yeah.
voices. Think I may have mentioned this before, but I like the Waze app, and there's different voices, and there's the voice of Karamo
Yeah, I
um,
didn't pick him this time.
from Queer Eye, the show Queer Eye. Um, One of the guys, he's the culture, so he's the motivator. He's the inspiring,
Well, as the
connecting. I mean, they're all inspiring, but so he says things, you got this. And, sometimes it's important to change lanes in life. And, and he says these things, and it gets me smiling and just gets me laughing. And it kind of gets me out of my own head and the craziness of traffic. And I've been using that for such a long time, but it still helps kind of ground me for a minute.
Well, and we really haven't talked about like stepping outside. At least I don't remember. We didn't talk about that yet, did we? But taking a moment to step outside, take a breath of fresh air, sunshine, all of that. Possibly even do barefoot, where you know.
Well, we're talking about in the midst of everything going on in life, taking kids places. And like I did talk about having your walking shoes with you so that you can,
That's true.
if your kid's in an activity and you're waiting and maybe you need to stay by the car, can you step out of the car for a minute? Can you take your shoes off and stand there in the grass? Lean up against a tree, sit down
Hug a
somewhere,
tree.
walk
Mhm.
around and find some pretty flowers, tune into a bird for a little while. Yeah. Is there opportunities to do that? Or maybe it's cold and snowing or pouring rain, but you can just sit. Maybe you've got a moon roof and you can just watch the rain come down.
Listen to it, the pitter patter of it. That's always relaxing. Even thunderstorms can be relaxing if it doesn't scare you, I guess.
So finding these moments when we're busy running from here to there, what things can we do to tune in? So our daughter goes to the robotics meeting. It's 2 or 3 nights a week, and she's there for 3 hours, and it's almost an hour drive during the week to get there. And so Don decided, I'm going to make some extra money while I'm down there because our son had been doing this right before he bought his house. And tell us, Don, what did you decide to do?
Oh my. Well, with DoorDash and yeah, um I've done it for now for I don't know, probably a couple of months, I think. But I started to realize that because it was, $5 and $7 and and it just wasn't
So it's
worth it.
rush hour. You drop your kid off at 6, you're driving around an
Well, yeah, and you get stuck in
unknown
traffic.
part of town and trying to pick up food and bring it to people's homes and all for $15 maybe for the couple hours.
Well, it's been a little better than that, but not really compared to the hours and what it comes down to in an hourly rate. Because you can do it either you can get an hourly pay for it, or you can go based on what they offer and tips that they offer. And when you do it either way, I break it down, and you're not really making, depends on the night, but you can make somewhere between maybe $10 to $15 an hour, doing it. And the gas that you end up using a lot of times, and then you run into frustrations because you have some of the restaurants, especially some of the fast food restaurants, you come there and they haven't even started the order, and or they have to wait for French fries to cook or something to cook, and so you sit there, and that's just time taken away from you getting another order to go out to do. And then I have people that the most I was going to make on something was $3, and just driving, even though if it wasn't that far. I used that much gas just getting to and coming so anyway, so I've kind of backed away from doing that.
Realizing you could spend your time different because then after you do that, it's 9 o'clock and you got to pick your kid up and drive another almost hour home. So, how can you use that time differently?
Yeah.
Is it worth the while? And maybe sometimes it is. Maybe you got really young kids and maybe it's an opportunity to make a little bit of extra money. It can be a helpful thing, but also is it really worth it? Is it really worth the time and the
Well, the
effort and the energy?
big part of it was realizing you have to really look at it very closely as to how much you're going to make on it, how many miles you're going to have to go. And that's where you have to do your comparison. So, if you're only making $7 on it, but it's only a mile to pick it up and a mile to drop it off, that's worth it. But if it's 9 miles, I did one time, and I think that I made $7 off it, and it went from it drove me all the way into our downtown area, which was quite a distance, and I had to find the hotel. It was a hotel, and it was a mess, and parking and all that. So it was, yeah, it wasn't very relaxing. Let me put it that way.
It's adding stress. So is it
Yeah,
worth, 15, $20, whatever, to have that added stress for that time? So
yeah.
sometimes we have to question the things we're doing. Sometimes we have to say, oh, maybe we're in the habit of getting together with people or going somewhere while our kids are in activity. And is it really helpful to us to be there? If I'm with a group of other moms, sometimes it's nice to hang out and chat with them. And sometimes it's better if I'm by myself. It's
Mhm.
better if I have some downtime because I tend to be a listener. And so a conversation with another mom can look like me listening and them talking
Mhm.
and me trying to figure out when to get words in and spending my energy thinking about that. And, you know, how do I balance that? How do I say, okay, I'm going to sit here and talk for a little bit, and then I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to go take care of something. We got to find ways to really, what is it that charges us up? What is it that helps us? For some of us, talking with a person is real helpful. For some of us, zoning out and just playing a game on your phone and listen to some quiet music and just forgetting about everything for a few minutes. Thinking about what we need, thinking about what can nourish us. How can we take care of ourselves? And, moving is always a good idea. Even if you're going to sit in the car, you just get up and walk around the car for a minute just to shift your energy.
Mhm.
Um, you lean your car seat all the way back and you just stretch for a little bit. We got to really tune in when we have those moments. Otherwise, we're tense, right? We're anxious. We've just driven and now we got this to do. And we're just sitting there thinking about all the things we got to do. And then a phone call comes through and we got to take care of that. And then our kid comes out and we got to sit in traffic and, oh, shoot, what about dinner? And I did pick up the medicine at the CVS and all these things we got to do, right? And we spend all this time and we're anxious and we're tense. And then, oh, my dad's in the hospital and I got to take care of that. Now I got to arrange going there. And we wind up like
Yeah.
this, all scrunched up. And, I work with so many people over the age of 70 and their posture is literally like this. And why? It's just all that energy and focus and things that we've done. So one big exercise and stretch that's so helpful. Breathe in. Do this with me, Don. Bring your arms in and then bring them out. Make sure your shoulders are down and pull them back. Look up towards the ceiling. Lower your arms a little bit. Let your shoulders drop down. Breathing out and then coming back up forward, even rounding in a little bit. Sometimes we don't realize our shoulders are up here until we lift them up and then drop them down.
Well, and the breathing is extremely important.
It's
It-
important to breathe. It's essential for living.
But I mean, but going from a short breath people, which I think a lot of times we do, I see that a lot, and learning to do more deep breathing throughout your day, taking a minute throughout, doing it, because then you can kind of turn it into almost make it the involuntary, or at least I know for myself, I think about it more often and then do it.
Our daughter told us she was doing 4-7-8 breathing while she was in the
Mhm.
stressful competition. So
Yeah,
you breathe in for 4, you hold it for 7, and then you breathe out slowly for 8. I like to do just the 4-4-4. So you breathe in, 2, 3, 4. You hold 2, 3, 4, and then breathe out 2, 3, 4. It's just kind of a simple.
yeah.
Sometimes I'll do that with my stretching. I'll be standing and I breathe up and in, and then I hold it, and then I breathe out as I stretch down forward into my forward stretch or downward dog pose.
Well, yeah, I tend to not give those numbers to somebody who hasn't done it much because I don't want anybody passing out for one, but I'll tell them to, breathe it in for, I tell them to do it for 3/4 full and try to take in as much as they can. And I'll tell them to do maybe a count of 4 or 5 and then try to make it as slow as possible, like leaky balloon slow. And like you say, relaxing things, letting the shoulders drop. That's a simplified version, but yeah, the stretching too is great. Um,
And sometimes I just build up to like a deep breath, flow it out. Okay, now I'm going to do it slower this time.
yeah,
And I'm going to try to breathe in longer this time. And I always am able to breathe out real slowly, but the breathing in slowly can be, I
yeah.
find that more challenging. So, and there's so many different things out there on breathing, and we'll have to do some more. In fact, my wonderful friend and coach Helen
We
does
need to get,
breath work. We have so many podcasts that we could do with her,
yeah.
training her on call. So shout out, Helen. We've got to get you scheduled so we can share all these wonderful tips and strategies and tools and things that you can learn, and just incorporating a small moment of it. You might not feel like it's doing a whole lot, yet it It really can. It can help us take care of ourselves for even just a minute. So I invite you to try that this week, to think about that. One simple thing I learned from positive intelligence, just gently touching your fingers together, just so the ridges touch, and just focusing on that, not thinking about it, not analyzing it, just tuning into that, even for 10 seconds, tuning into the sound of something, sitting with your cat, just
Petting and
stroking your cat, just watching the hair float around in the air.
well, I think one of the things too is we really have to change mindset too, that we deserve that time, that we deserve all this self-care. Where a lot of the people I deal with are givers that are taking care of everybody else, giving everybody else's care, and they just have learned not to give themselves that, and they really need to. We really work on you on deserving it and needing to do it too, because giving and giving out
We
becomes
become depleted.
burnout.
Become depleted. Yeah, we need to
Yeah,
fill our cup
and
back up.
so to really work on mindset that says I deserve this time, this moment, even if it's 5 minutes, but I still that we all deserve 5 minutes.
And
Shoot.
if you have a hard time thinking that you deserve it, just I need this in order to be patient for my child. I know my child's going to come out of school and be ranting about something or be upset about something, or they're over hungry, and I need to take a minute so that I can be the best me.
Mhm.
It's not only good for your health, but it's good for those around you. And
And
so,
productivity and all of that too. So that's our podcast for today, and we hope that you've enjoyed it.
and please learn more about us. Check out our Facebook page, Instagram, gina.focusedhealthyfamily. Be sure to tune in every Thursday. Share these podcasts with friends. You can watch them live on YouTube, not live. You can watch them on YouTube. You can see clips of them that we're now sending out. Let your friends know, pass it around. You can either tune in anywhere you listen to a podcast or on YouTube. On Tuesdays, we do a short little podcast that's a tip for parents, covering both parenting your children and yourselves as well as your aging loved ones. You can receive that by email or tune in to listen to it. Give us some feedback. Let us know what your questions are, especially in regards to the sandwich generation and juggling raising children and helping care for aging loved ones. And we'd love to hear from you. And
Remember the Ask the OT coming up. Like I said, we're going to do our first live April 2nd, but look into it now. Join us now, and you can find that up there on our website also.
and remember, how you speak to your children and yourself today shapes their future and yours.